What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome on into the Brass Ring Media Podcast for Friday. It's Friday, June 13th, Friday the 13th. Oh boy, spooky. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Zach Haydorn. Normally, my partner in crime with me is one Tyler Sage, but man, I'll tell you, StreamYard, shame on you. Shame on you, StreamYard, for ruining our schedule here on the Brass Ring Media Podcast. Man, normally we run this show for a second time during the week. We do 2 shows of this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but an StreamYard outage, which is how we stream to all of you wonderful people, was broken for most of the afternoon yesterday. So we kind of had to reorganize our plans and reorganize what we're going to do and our schedules and whatnot. So it's just me. But guess what? I'm happy because I've got all of you. And we got a lot to talk about. We're going to hit a ton on the AEW big Summer Blockbuster event that was on Wednesday. We'll get into some news topics and hopefully get into your questions, your comments, and your topics if you so choose. So thanks so much. If you're tuning in and you're tuning in on YouTube, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. Thanks for hitting play, and thanks for watching. And thanks for being a subscriber. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, hey, what you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button right now, and so you don't miss any of the great content that we have dropping on the channel all throughout the week. We've got a multitude of live shows, all sorts of video content. We have a daily wrestling hotline and so much more. Yesterday on the channel, Robert Vallejos, who is doing something in the pro wrestling podcast content space that nobody else is doing. His Nocturnal Knockout show is tremendous. It's fantastic. You guys got to check it out. Yesterday, he did a full deep dive with Gunther winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship from Jey Uso on Raw. Robert did just a deep dive analysis into world title changes on TV in WWE throughout the years. I mean, going back to 1997 or something. It was such a cool show. If you're not watching or listening to Nocturnal Knockout on a regular basis, you got to do it. I'm telling you, it's one of the best shows out there today. So don't miss it. It's right here on Brass Ring Media. Any live show that we do, we also run as an audio podcast on the Brass Ring Media podcast feed. So wherever you get your podcasts, just search Brass Ring Media and all these live shows. The Robert show that I just mentioned, both of our Brass Ring Media podcasts, the Kick-Ass podcast, the Daily Wrestling Hotline, all goes up there. So you're not missing anything. And that way you can take us on the go and, hit play on our shows at the gym or at the grocery store or at work. Trying to give as many people as many options as they can to kind of engage with Brass Ring Media and the work that we do. I do have the live chat open and ready to go for you guys, and we got it filled up right now. We got Sean, who's our Brass Ring Media Gold member. One of them says, "What's up, everyone? Busy Friday here." It certainly is, Sean. Thanks so much. Big thank you to Sean Plicta and Adam Kidd, our 2 Brass Ring Media Gold members. Also, the boss wants to know who broke StreamYard. Good question, but I gotta have some words with them. No, I'm not sure what happened with that yesterday, but broken nonetheless. Thanks for being here. E says, "What's up? What's going on, E?" Tracy's in the live chat. We got Reginald here who's kicking back with some coffee and donuts. I love that, Reginald. Thanks so much. And it's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a real fun show. So excited to have you all. Real quick, if you're looking to, and you should be, to take your Brass Ring Media experience to the next level, turn the volume up on that a little bit. We do offer Brass Ring Media membership, and it's on Patreon right now, patreon.com/Brass Ring Media. It gets you access to everything that we do on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. Our members get a member-only podcast once a week. We got 2 actually dropping this week. One will drop soon after the show and another one over the weekend. But member-only podcast at least once a week. All of our pay-per-view and PLE review shows are for our members. A Discord community where you can hang out with all of our members and talk wrestling and talk life. It's really become, a tight-knit group, which was our vision going in. We were hoping to have just a good group of people that can share opinions and agree and disagree and talk about life, and we really have that in the Discord community. So hopefully you guys all check that out, and we got lots of other stuff that drops for members as well. So it's patreon.com/Brash Media. It's only $4. Also, right now we have it enabled here on YouTube, so you can just literally hit subscribe on YouTube right now and become a member, and you get all the shows that we do there for members right here on YouTube. So you can do that right now by hitting subscribe. Last but not least, here for the plugs, we've got, super chats enabled. If you're able to, ask a question or willing to make a contribution to the show with a topic suggestion or just a random comment or rant, hey, we love those, and we thank you in advance for that. Sean here, our Brash Stream Gold member, says BRM, baby. I love that. Thank you, Sean. All right, so let's get into the meat of the show today. And the first thing I want to talk about is Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega from this week's episode of AEW Dynamite. Now, I, like everybody, you have your concerns about something like this, or going back to something like this, because, Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada, those 4 matches in New Japan, like, they are tremendous matches. And the story between those two guys in New Japan is a tremendous story. I mean, you're not going to find too many like pro wrestling rivalries that are better than that one. I mean, they're out there. Ones that are just as good. You got Rock Austin, of course. You've got, I don't know, Hogan and, I think Bobby Heenan, I guess, maybe, or Orndorff or something like that. But like, Okada and Omega is up there as far as rivalry goes. And, they wrestled, 8 years ago now. It was the last time, or 7 years ago was the last time, something like that. And, you worry about, like, all right, do you want to mess with that? Do you want to mess with what they have already done and leave a bad taste in people's mouths, right? Like, it's like a great band, coming out of retirement. You're like, I want to see it again. I want to see them again, but man, I hope they don't stink the joint up. Like, right? I mean, that's a concern. Nostalgia is powerful, but bad nostalgia can be pretty rough. So, that crossed my mind. I'm sure it crossed your mind too, in terms of, going with this match. At the same time, you have to go with it, right? You have to do it. You got Kenny Omega, you got Okada on your roster. You got a big stadium show coming up. Like, this is when you do it. This is when you trot that out. I mean, you don't want to wait even longer, right? Because, Omega could get hurt. Okada could get hurt. They're both older. They both, their bodies have been through a lot. They've worked a really tough, hard style, over the years. And so you just never know. You just never know. So when you have the chance to go with it, you go with it. And so I don't fault Tony Khan for that. And with these two, I don't think it's as much of a roll of a dice in terms of what their performance is going to be as other, nostalgia acts in wrestling might be. I think these two are going to deliver. Are they going to deliver at the level of 2018, or 2017? Kenny Omega versus Okada? Probably not. Likely not. I mean, how could you? How could anybody physically, live up to their 7-year younger self, right? Tough, but I still think it can be, a really good match. And for it to be a really good match and for it to appeal to all of your fans, you have to really give it some nuanced and focused build. And that is what we got this week on AEW Dynamite or on AEW Summer Blockbuster. Like, I think to me, the build that we saw was a recognition by Tony Khan and the company and Omega and Okada that, like, hey, it was 8 years ago where he had this feud. A lot has changed since then. And so we need to tell a story for the now. We need to tell a story that gets people interested in this match right now, today. But we don't want to leave behind the history either. We don't want to leave that in the past either. We want to talk about that because that is the reason why the match is existing, is that history. So you want to tell that too. And they walked that line perfectly this week. I mean, seriously, a home run. They had a tremendous video package. We've been calling for that on this show for a long time, that, hey, you got to introduce this stuff to the audience. And I mean, that video package was great. Like, I found myself trying to search for it again, going like, hey, I want to see that again. And it was fun to look back on that rivalry in New Japan. And they actually had clips from the matches and from all 4 matches, which was really cool. Omega, man, he looked a lot different. He looked a lot different for those series of matches. Okada too. But it did a nice job where if you've never seen an Okada versus Omega match and you don't know the rivalry, like, I think that did a pretty good job of telling you why everybody cares about it so much and why it was so good. Look, you can't do the matches justice in a clip. I mean, right? You can't. You can only do the best that you can. And I think that was it. I mean, I don't know how you could put together a better recap of that rivalry than that. I mean, I really don't. So thumbs up for AEW kind of checking that box. Okay, why does the history matter? Why does this rivalry matter? Okay, we did that. But then you actually went the extra step and you actually built an angle. You actually built a story for now. And I've been calling for that for months. Like, if you're going to do this match, you got to make it matter now for people that, for people who only know this version of Kazuchika Okada, which, has been hit or miss at best. And they only know this version of Kenny Omega. You got to have a storyline and an angle for them. And that, I thought, was executed magnificently this week too. I mean, you've got now a clear heel in Okada, a clear babyface in Kenny Omega. You got Don Callis involved. He can do the talking for Okada. That all is there. And then you had a really, really intense angle where there's blood, there's violence, there's stretchers, there's police batons, like all that stuff gave it a hint of, hey, this is serious, and now we want the whole audience behind Kenny Omega. And Don Callis has a lot of work to do in order to get it there. But I just think that it was a good mix this week of build for this match. You had a little bit of new, you had a little bit of old, and then you just let the guys go out there and do their thing. And that's my expectation. That's my expectation in terms of what this build should be. And I don't know how you could do much better with it. Or the only way you could have done better for this match is if you treated Okada a little bit better, when he first came into the company, right? Like, that's the only way. That's the only way that you could have made this feud even better than what they did on Fridays. If you just set the table a little bit better for Okada specifically. Because, I mean, look, frankly, like, he's been a bit of a joke. He's been a bit of a comedy character. He's been just around. He's been saying the B word, right? I mean, that's all the fans of AEW today really know. We can have pretty good matches, right? But that's about it. And we haven't seen super serious Okada yet. So that is the only way that I think at this point you could have made it better, and they should have done that. I mean, I think they've missed with Okada for a while here, but you know, they found their way. They found their way here for this. So what do you guys think? Everybody who's watching the live chat, like, toss it up. What do you think of the build? What do you think of the angle? What do you think of the video package? The setup for Okada and Omega. We've got a lot of people chiming in on this. Tracy says here, actually, you know what? Let me go back. Sean says, our gold member said, okay, Dynamite, Okada, Omega, the angle was done well without all the fake blood. And Tracy says, in response to that, which is why I went back, fake blood is better than real blood, though. And I didn't have as much of a problem, Sean, with the fake blood. I don't know. It may, you know, to me, I'm kind of in Tracy's camp here. Like, the fake blood looked good enough to me where it's worth doing that instead of somebody, you know, blading in a match. There's a time and a place where you should blade, but because they were trying to sell the internal Omega injuries, they did the blood from the mouth capsule clearly, and you needed to do that. You can't fake, or you don't want to fake internal bleeding. So I didn't have as big of a problem with that. It was over the top, yes, but it was kind of supposed to be. You know, I think it was supposed to be over the top. So I get why you were looking. I get why you'd look at that and go, "Geez, like, come on, that's totally fake blood." And I think it did look like fake blood. I'm not sitting here trying to like make the argument that like, hey, that didn't look like fake blood. It looked like real blood. No, it looked like fake blood. It just didn't have like a negative impact for me. Like it worked. It worked to that end. It worked to that end. But it was effective. Like, I thought it got heat. I thought it got heat on Okada. Like, especially when the blood happened. I mean, you had that, there was like an audible, you know, in the audience, the people who didn't get to see like the capsule, right? That audience reacted to that in the like, oh, like stunned kind of way. So yeah, I would have greenlit it. I would have greenlit it that way. Sean also says here, again, I didn't see the rivalry between the two, so I want to know about it. How good will the match be? Not sure, but I'm all for it. So yeah, so Sean's a really good example of I think a significant portion of the AEW fan base. You know, like, you know about it, you know about that feud, you know about the two guys, you know that, you know, they're rivals, but you didn't see it live, and so you don't really know. The video package was a good step in that direction. You know, I thought it was a good way to address that, Sean. I see you here. You said in a future or an earlier chat, like, hey, that video package was good. So yeah, like, I think that it delivered for you in that regard. I mean, I'm curious as to whether or not you do, but to me, you know, that it delivered to that end. Thanks, Sean. Sean also says here, though, we need to stop with a lot of the weapons as well. Taping Adam Page's mouth shut wasn't great either, but I thought Mox had an effective promo. Yeah, we'll get into Mox and Adam Page here in a minute. Yeah, I mean, you look, just like anything else in pro wrestling, or I guess like just anything else, period, right? You got to do this stuff when it makes sense. You know, you can't do weapon stuff all the time, right? It's got to matter. You got to pick and choose your spots. You got to make sure that when you play a weapon card, that it's impactful. And I think AEW suffered a while where that stuff wasn't impactful. You'd have too many people bleeding on the same show. You have too many weapons on the same show. So none of that stuff stood out. But I think they've corrected that. I think that they've worked hard to correct that, so that when they want to use it, and so that when an angle needs it, they can use it without worry. And I think that was this. Could the angle have been done without the blood? Sure. Yeah, it could have been. I mean, it definitely could have been. No question about that. But I don't know. I think the blood added a little. It added a little. It added a little. For sure. Yeah, no, Sean, we know. Yeah, you never said that you didn't like the angle. So for sure, Sean says here, I'm in the minority, and that's fine. I still like the angle. I thought I clarified that. Curious to see who wins. And that'll be in future conversations. Yeah, I mean, we got to see where they go, with this, because they set up the like clear heel versus babyface dynamic. Like it kind of makes you think that there's going to be I kind of think there's going to be another major babyface win on the show. So they might not want to water down that with like a babyface win here, and maybe the plan is to do more than one Okada and Omega match in AEW. That's a possibility. So I kind of think if I had to make a pick at this point in time, I'm picking Okada to win this. But we'll see. We'll see how the build goes here in the next few weeks. And really, like, we're not that far away. When you really think about it, especially when you take out, like, all right, we got the holiday coming up, 4th of July, like, July 12th is going to be here, before we know it. It's going to be here before we know it. And so there's not that much TV left. So this was an important week for Okada and Omega. All right, if you got further questions on Okada and Omega, drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can, or if you've got other things you want to talk about, we can do that. Now, but let's pivot a little bit. Actually, let me just get to Derek Mitchell's chat here, because I do want to do this. It's not a super chat, but thank you, Derek. We appreciate. First of all, thanks for joining the show. Good to see you live here. Derek says, I enjoyed AEW trying to bring folks up to speed with Omega and Okada that didn't watch their series in New Japan Pro Wrestling. I feel AEW hasn't showcased Okada as a top star, and Omega said he wasn't the same either. So yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because they did they haven't showcased Okada as big of a star in AEW as he was in New Japan. I mean, New Japan, he was like the guy, right? I mean, he was the top guy. And then he's been far from that in AEW. And I don't even think Tony Khan or folks in AEW even argue that point. There hasn't been an attempt really until right now to present him as anything else other than that, other than like a background guy who can have good matches. That's been it. So I don't know if I'm Omega, if you're saying like, hey, I don't recognize those guys in that video, right? Omega had that moment on the microphone where he goes, hey, like, I don't recognize myself, man. I don't recognize that person anymore. I think that is fine, but you got to say something else afterwards, right? You got to say, hey, I'm not the same guy that I was then. I'm better, right? Or I'm more experienced, or I'm more ready, or I'm, more polished, or I'm smarter. Like, I feel like you have to give yourself something so that you don't tell the audience, hey, that was then, and what we do now isn't going to be as good, which is kind of what you do if you say, wow, that is not the same guy, and you don't follow that up with anything specific, right? You got to get, I think you need that next sentence from Kenny saying, yeah, I'm not the same guy, but I'm better. And I only won two out of three matches from Okada in New Japan. I'm going to make that record pristine in AEW, right? I mean, there's a way that you can still make the match feel big now and not have to hedge. And it kind of felt like Omega was hedging there, with what he said about the video. So good comment, Derek. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining the show. The Unified Championship is going to be an interesting title to look at and watch here in the next 6 to 8 months. Like when they had the 2 belts on the table and then they had the middle belt covered, you're going, okay, like they're clearly going to unify these titles into one championship. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You want that. You want the least amount of singles championships that you have, the better in any company. And so this is an attempt at that. However, it seems to me, and you guys can drop your opinions in the live chat here. I just want to take poll of everybody who's watching. It seems to me that the unified title, right, does not sound like a secondary championship to me. Like when I hear that name, the AEW Unified Championship, right? I don't think secondary title, especially when Okada and Omega are wrestling for it, right? I think second world title. Honestly, that's what I think. The International Championship, you knew was a secondary title. It kind of has a secondary title name, and it was held by secondary title guys for the most part. I don't know. Will Ospreay wasn't really ever a secondary guy, and neither is Kenny Omega, but the title was clearly a step below the world title. Same thing with the Continental title, especially the Continental title. That's one that you never needed. You never needed that. But now you're merging them together, and a unified title sounds like something bigger than both of those championships. It sounds like it's on the level of a world title. So you got to wonder, why is that? Is there a brand split on the horizon? Could be. I think that would make sense. You've got Ring of Honor, but okay, nobody needs that. And the unified title, we got a lot of people talking about the name here, the unified title. The unified title, I think it's a good name. Or okay, let me take it. I don't think it's a good name, but I think it the Intercontinental title, if you named it that, there's just how do I say it? There's just an inherent red flag over that name that screams secondary title. And you can blame WWE for that one. That's just something that they have in their canon, that I'm going to look up. I want to look up all the Intercontinental champions here for a minute, because I want to see something. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, when you look at the when people won, I can't go through the whole list. This could be a fun show to do on the Patreon feed. But when you look at the Intercontinental champions and when talent were Intercontinental champions, it never was in tandem with the world title. It was always folks on the way to the world title. It never really tried to stand. It never tried to stand on its own as a second world championship before they even had the second world title. It just didn't. That was not the point of it. And so that's why I wouldn't call it the Intercontinental title, because it has that meaning in pro wrestling lore. It has that. So you don't want to go there with it. You don't want to go there with it. And I think unified title is fine. I mean, we had the universal title, right? I mean, I think unified title is better than universal title, don't you? See, I think that works better unified than universal, and it's on par with world. So like, I think we're about to see a brand split. If I were to make a prediction, and in 6 months' time at this point, or maybe at the first of the year, does AEW have two separate brands? I would say yes. I would say yes. Zach says here, doesn't New Japan have an IC title? They did. They don't anymore. They did have one though. They had the IWGP. They had the IWGP Intercontinental title. They merged it with the World Heavyweight Championship to get the world title that they have now. But now they have a global championship. That's kind of their secondary title. So that's how New Japan works. But New Japan, I don't think New Japan is what you're chasing if you're a wrestling promotion, as far as singles titles go. Like, they've got too many championships, period. So I don't know that that's who you're trying to chase down. If you're putting New Japan on a pedestal for like how to do the championship thing, I think that's a mistake. And WWE doesn't have it right either. But New Japan especially, they've got a ton of championships that don't mean a lot. So AEW can do better. AEW can do better. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. In regards to Omega and Okada, we have a super chat from Tracy, who says the story of maturing wrestlers meeting again after all these years is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hedging is real. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I think you can tell a really good story, Tracy, of like the maturing wrestlers meeting again without sending out hedging bets on, but it's not going to be as good as before. Like, it kind of seems like in a meta space, Omega's trying to tell you there, like, hey, this is going to be good. I'm not that guy, though. I'm not that guy. And that's where I think you can, pull back a little bit or add something to that promo where I'm not that guy, but I'm still really, really good. And here's why. And so that's why I'm going to beat you, Okada. Like, I still think you can go down that road. Maturing wrestler story, I think is interesting. It's really interesting. And these two guys, because of who they are, and because of the history that they have, they can, they can tell that story, I think, better, than some other pro wrestlers. It's kind of weird because you got Cena and CM Punk doing the same thing in WWE. You've got, they're a very similar type of rivalry, not in terms of match quality, of course, but just in terms of meaning in the company and meaning for the era and meaning for them as stars. Like, it's the same. It's very, very, very similar. So yeah, so we'll see where it goes. Thanks so much, Tracy, for the super chat. Means a lot. Thank you. Let's see here. Sean says brand splits work if you use them properly. I think they work if you use them properly. WWE has been hit or miss, hit and miss, mostly miss when it comes to, when it comes to the brand split. I mean, they really, especially under Vince McMahon, I think they really like to use that brand split only when it serves them, and not as like a regular rule. Like, and so I think people are a little bit, have a bad taste in their mouth about that. But all things considered, I think it can definitely work. I mean, I think right now, you have a brand split, but it's not hard and fast. And like, there's pros and cons to that. I think people want to appreciate I think people appreciate, hey, you said there's a brand split, stick to it, please. I think people appreciate that. At the same time, I think that there's so much cross pollination that they really kind of use the brand split as just a foundation, and that's it. I mean, after all, CM Punk's fighting John Cena. CM Punk's a Raw guy. John Cena is a SmackDown guy. Like, so they very easily cross over. I don't love that either. I think it's a little bit disrespectful to your fans, but it can work if you keep your integrity with it. And I'm actually kind of excited to see like what AEW does with the brand split, because we only have really like just WWE to look at in terms of what a brand split looks like or what a brand split is. We just have, the WWE stuff out there, nobody else. So if I was Tony Khan, like, I would look at this and I would say, hey, how can we do this better? Number one, and stick to it. Number two, that would be my goal. They're going to run into the same problems though that WWE runs into, where it's just like, we just need the guy from Collision to come on in. That's what we need. That's what the show needs. That's what the storyline needs. That's what we need. And so I think that, like, if you're a creative person, rather than tell a worse story, I think they just say, all right, sacrifice the brand split. And I mean, and it has its pros and cons. It has its pros and cons for sure. All right, let's see. Did I miss any chats here? Let me see here. Let me pull those up. All right. So, Adam Page and Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks. Pretty big week for that whole like ecosystem of AEW. And I'm pretty high on what they did. I think we now know how the matches are going to go, right? We know that it's going to be Jon Moxley against Hangman Adam Page for the world title. And I think what we're getting now is Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland against the Young Bucks. I think that's kind of what they're building. And I thought they did a really nice job with that angle, with Ospreay sacrificing himself for Swerve. And like, I just think that it was like good emotion, good, like real drama, good, real storytelling. And I liked it. I like that, you have the world title feud happening with Jon Moxley and Adam Page, but you have these other kind of offshoot storylines, but that still revolve around it. And, at some point, what they've set up here is a scenario where Adam Page is going to come back and help Swerve Strickland, and be on Swerve's side. And him and Ospreay and Swerve are going to kind of be on the same team, going into All In. And that, I think, is going to make for a really good moment in AEW history, and it's going to be a big pop. Whatever city gets that show and gets that angle is pretty lucky, because that's going to be a big time moment. They've been building to that for much of 2025, and even stemming from last year a little bit too. If you actually take the matches that Strickland and Page had into account, so it's a big moment. It's a big moment, and everything that they're doing seems to serve that moment at this point in time. And so I think it's all building to the Death Riders falling and Jon Moxley falling as champion, but they're taking slow but steady steps in order to get there. And I think that is key. That is key. We got Zach here who says, very good storytelling within this AEW Avengers versus Death Riders story. Yeah, and you guys know me. I don't have as big of an issue with the Death Riders as most other people do. They're being heels. they're being heels. Yeah, they're cheating. Yeah, they're boring. Yeah, they're all those things. But they are heels, and they're getting heat now. And if you look back at where the company was like pre-Death Riders, and now when you look at it, it's a little more flushed out. It's flushed out more effectively. Your top guys are there clearly. You have the prize that they're chasing in Jon Moxley and the world title. Everything's kind of flushed itself out a little bit better once the Death Riders thing got rolling. So I got nothing bad to say about that angle at this point, especially if they pay it off, with some huge, title win for Adam Page at Globe Life Field at All In. I mean, it's going to be epic. It's going to be, epic. Joshua says here, the Death Riders suck. I love this. The Death Riders suck. Their suckiness will at least result in people rooting for their downfall. So yes, heels. Well, there you go. I mean, what else are you supposed to think, Joshua? Right? I mean, what else do you want? Like, what else do you want from them? I think that's the exact, like, I think if you told Jon Moxley this and you said, hey, 90% of AEW fans are going to feel like this about your run with the title and your run with the Death Riders, I think people would be like, I think Jon Moxley would say, hell yes, that's what I want. So I think, Joshua, you're kind of playing right into the hands of old Jon Moxley, of old Tony Khan. Tracy says here, we seen a Marina and Statlander feud or Stat joining. And I said, and then says here, that Yuta and Stat backstage scene was weird. It was weird. I think Yuta was extra weird in it. I don't know that I see Statlander joining. Let's just start there. Because if she joins, then Marina Shafir's role kind of gets neutralized. But at the same time, it does seem like there's been a bit of a concerted effort to start building a women's tag team division. You got TJ, you got these guys now. I mean, I think that there's slow and steady, pieces being put on the game board for a women's tag division. Too many titles. But I digress. So with that happening, I mean, I think that like a Marina and Statlander tag team could work. But Marina's role in the Death Riders is kind of like very specific and very, calculated, and they don't mess with it too much. And if Statlander's there, all of a sudden you ask Marina to do a lot more. She's got to interact with Statlander. She's got to have tag team matches. She can't just be, the heavy for Jon Moxley, right? It's more than that. And so I don't know. I'm mixed. I'm mixed on it. Somebody in the chat here said, Jack says here in the chat that Marina versus Statlander is a vehicle to get Willow and Statlander back together. And so maybe that's the tag team. Maybe that's the tag team that they're really building here, is that one. And, that's a possibility. I still don't know how I feel about Willow in a tag team, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I think Willow is just a single act, and Statlander is just kind of not one. Like, I just, it's not that she's bad or anything like that, but I think Willow is on a whole nother level than her. And so, I think Statlander kind of drags Willow down a little bit, if you ask me. So that's my 2 cents. Let's see here. I want to get into what Zach and Sean are talking about. So Sean says here, Zach, it has not been good storytelling. And Zach's wondering, what has it been? And then Sean says the Avengers versus the Death Riders. So Sean, I don't know, man. I'm better. I'm much higher on it than it's not good storytelling. I think it has been good storytelling. And you know me, like, if you listen to the show, I'm not a apologist for AEW or WWE for that matter, for nobody. But I hope anyway that you guys can trust, like, when I'm thinking something's good or thinking something isn't good, like, there's no real bias going into it. I'm just trying to analyze what we're seeing. And when I look at the storyline, I don't know what I would want more from. I mean, you've got clearly defined baby faces and heels. You've got a long-term story arc for both Moxley and Adam Page that you're working through. You've got Page and Ospreay connected because they battled in the Owen and they promised each other that they'd help the other in the fight against the Death Riders. You've got Swerve who knows that he should be on the side of the good guys, but isn't ready yet because of his relationship with Adam Page. Like, I think there's a lot there. I think that there's a lot there, and I think that they've threaded that needle pretty well, all things considered. I mean, it all this Death Rider stuff is all contingent on how they put a stamp on the storyline at the end. Can they tie this whole storyline together in a perfect way and give it the perfect ending? That's what's at stake. And I think depending on how they do that, that's how people will look back on the story, for better or worse. I think if they have a tremendous match, Moxley against Page at All In, and Page wins the championship, like, that's a good ending, right? That's a good strong ending for this storyline. The good guys prevail, right? If it's anything else, then I gotta rethink it. I really think it has to end with the babyfaces going over strong. Sean says here, as a whole, no, it's been a little bit better as far as the Page part goes, but I will just be glad when Mox loses the title, which hopefully will be soon. Yeah, I think that's what they want, right? I think that's exactly what they want. I think, again, if Moxley read this, he'd be very happy because he says that it's working. Maria in the chat says, do you think Darby will appear and help Hangman at All In? Interesting. Yeah, the Darby factor is still out there. I kind of think no, he won't at this point, just because it'd be so out of the blue. Not in terms of like the story, because I think Darby is attached to the story, but just in terms of like the timing. Right. And I think that if Darby comes back and Hangman wins the title, you're kind of like splitting your focus a little bit. The focus at the end of that will be the fact that Darby's back and that Hangman's the new world champion. And I think you just want it all to be about Hangman winning the world title. Like, to me, that's the end. And if you bring Darby back, you kind of mess with that a little bit, in my opinion. Thanks, Maria. Appreciate you. So glad you could join the show. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. I don't want to. I could sit here and talk with you all for a long time. But I need to go and record the member show and get that up for our members. So if you're interested in becoming a Brass Ring Media member and you're able and you're willing to contribute $4 a month, we offer a ton for that $4. You get member only shows once a week, all of our pay-per-view and PLE reviews, access to the Discord community, everything. And so I hope that you at least head over to Patreon and check it out. Check out what the tiers are. We have a gold tier, which gets you kind of unlimited super chat attention during the show. We have and some other perks that come up as well. So take a look. But the regular tier is only $4 a month, and it comes with a lot of content. So thank you all for being here. Apologize for yesterday. Let's all send StreamYard a mean note, but appreciate it. Hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. Happy Father's Day to those out there who are dads, and we'll catch you guys all real soon. See ya.